Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Traveling Mollies. Here we are once again for our open mic and reading series. I introduce my co-host, Nina Corwin. You're muted, Nina.
It's nice to see you again. It's been like 2 weeks since I saw you last, which is kind of amazing. But Al did a wonderful, Al and his organization Right On just did a wonderful conference up in Washington Island in Wisconsin. But right now he's being my co-host at Traveling Molly's open mic and featuring these two wonderful poets we have tonight, Melissa Studdard and Virgil Suarez.
So, yes, welcome. Yeah, Nina was referring to, I work for an organization called Right On Door County. Door County is a place in Wisconsin. We had a really nice lit fest that Nina came up to, and that was a couple weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. Had a lot of people. And anyway, if anybody's out there in the YouTube land that was there, thank you for coming. Nina, do you want me to start tonight or
would you? Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, generally, Nina and I, when we were in the real world, we would always start the open mic because nobody wanted to be first, so we would always be the ones to start. So this is I'm going to do a poem that's really new. Like, I don't know if it's even 24 hours old, but I'm going to read it. And it's one of those poems that came more out of my head than out of my gut, but we'll see if it works. It's called One and Only Night. Headlights in the driveway, white light pressing his eyelids awake. He checks the window, no one there. Down the dark stairs to check if he left the yard lights on. In the kitchen, everything glows white, blue-white. He looks through the patio door. Full moon floats above the quaking trees. Their long shadows move across the lawn in solemn procession. He tries to write it. The words of a long-forgotten prayer fill the page. He hears his dead mother's voice calling to check if he landed safely, feels the warm breath of a woman he's never stopped loving soft on his neck, sees a baby laughing in his arms, spins dizzy in a Pacific wave that picks him up, cartwheeling, pressing him into the sandy floor. He breaks the surface, gasping for air, a brightness he doesn't know. The pencil begins to print as if first learning, shaping letters, matching words to pictures, pressing hard at first. Deep into the paper, the pencil writes, standing naked under my kitchen skylight, I am so small. Oh, the infinite multitudes. Just another leaf dancing high in the treetops, alone and full as a grain of sand, as this moon, this one and only night. Thank you.
That is beautiful. Now we're going to go from the sublime to the nearly ridiculous. Many of you know that I am a psychotherapist in real life or in the daytime. And I was trained in this man's work for many years. This is called The Father of Psychoanalysis Develops a Fetish. Shlomo, nay Sigmund, can't shake the feeling. He misses his mother's smile. Wherever he turns, earlobes, lips, and locks of hair. Not to mention buttons uncoupled from their holes to reveal the softest flesh, the sweetest milk, the deepest wound. It's always her. There's no help for it. Thank you. So So from here, we're going to go right for the open mic. And maybe we can start with John Simmons. John.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much. I'm a little nervous about this, but I'm also happy because I understand there are some serious musicians in the audience, and so I know that they will be quick to point out and notice perhaps some flaws in this presentation by a musical spectator. This is called "Of Music and Keys to Its Secrets." It's kind of a nostalgic piece about growing up in another city somewhat to the east of Chicago and in the 50s. Of music and keys to its secrets. We entered our new age of jazz through the horn's open bell, luring us into its shiny insides to be with others, warmed to its timing, not through the end where the spit, sweat, and breath of exhausted souls made sounds slide into night air, lending reason to moments unsure, but from the rush to the listeners' tables, mid smoke, ice and glass, soft laughs and smiles, perfumes of hope and comfort from nestled corners, sensing tempo and tune pumped through the dark, where dancing overruled talk and led its own steps to adventure. In the 50s, we worked to recycle the 20s, maybe to live like our parents, waving off rock and roll crowds as high schoolers trapped in a bus of their dreams, riding to prom nights forever. We hummed more than bought crooner liltings and bypassed the big dance band night spots that lit wooded highways near lakes. But seated in the mirrored metropole, we heard the drumming of Cozy Cole, watched Russell Big Chief Moore making his large frame tromboning, fueled by his glasses of tea, much the center of wonder in a nation's return to old music. And on 52nd Street, Condon's and Ryan's sketched more scenes to be into and seen. New York at night in bright light Central Plaza, where Conrad Janis's trombone made Nocturne a vast, friendly place for young strangers roaming the same thirsty trail, not sure how close to the music it took us. Who knew of the path soon winding to Newport? Do you like Brubeck? A popular question to follow. Do you come here often? Suburban boys greeting big city girls, nodding them on into endless tones of tenor sax, keyboard, and whispering drums that filled in for nothing really to say between lit cigarettes and sip beer. Places we'd been measured our coolness, displayed by mentions, Stuyvesant Casino and shrine status Birdland. From the jazzman's lapse into wallpaper music grew notes that seemed to hum, weary of life, sharing familiar sounds without tune, music from gathering moods of ennui, the riffs of blaring intent and galloping joy. We sensed it was played by adults from worlds very different from ours. There's the places where sound began. We, the followers, hoping for clues to our futures in chords, drifts of noise, gentle trailing applause, stirring our own responses to destinations unknown. Was jazz something we had to translate or pretend to sense as private rhythms felt only by those trained to play them. New York's drinking age, 18, lured crowds from Jersey and elsewhere to join the ensemble of cheerleading teens, sharing the reheated tastes of tired parents. The wild child who knew her way into neighborhood social club hangouts for city tough guys in training was our long-haired siren at hope in a land of deep brass and slow, deadpan shrugs. We linked this mystery girl to the haunts of a city's deep places, not sure what she wanted to teach us, but hoping the grown-up music from remnants of other lives might do something different for ours. Thanks.
Wow, thank you, John. Good to hear you.
Thank you very much.
If you've got another one, feel free. We've got, people have usually about 4 minutes, but we've got a short list tonight, so you're welcome to give us another one.
Okay. This is called, I was inspired by the new technology as it applies to romance. This is called The Thought That Counts Now Writes and Delivers. We bought, B-O-T, we bought a bouquet for your special day at 1-800-I love you. Say it with flowers indeed, but may we send a note to go with them? Words coming forth just right in the spirit of things to expect. Petals in bright yellow bursts, signaling amorous intent. Just feed your warm words through the listener's phones, and with the corsage comes a message expressing affectionate instincts, replete with artistic insights, cut from assembled input into arranged ideas, to insert inspiration in ways that affect imagination, arriving intact as though an actual impulse from a being of advanced impressions and allegorical irony, obsessed with the use of our system's apparent initials, embedding an offer of peace with flowers, no animosity implied, in an approach inimitable, albeit inclusive, actuarially incisive, with algorithms inserted, ambiguity insinuated, astronomically immense, artfully intriguing, and always infinite. Integrated circuits, currents flowing, alternate and direct, light bulbs eyeing each word of keystroke attraction through hybrid human veins and energeneric veins, energeneric wires in place. We'll show you cared enough to blend the very best.
Thank you, John. John, are you I know you're in Hawaii right now. Are you originally from New Jersey?
New York. I was born in Boston, left before I could talk, and grew up about 30 miles from New York City in Rockland County, New York. It's
I don't know, John, sound like you were hearing Boston when you were growing up.
My parents are New Englanders, but they don't have an accent. My two brothers didn't have accents either. The only person in the family that has an accent like this, I was on the elevator the other day. Quick story. On the elevator the other day, guy at the hospital, guy gets in, and I said, which floor would you like? And he looks at me, he says, what part of New York are you from? So on the basis of, a 5-word sentence, people, usually takes a little longer. Anyway, thank you for asking.
Okay. Well, thanks, John. Next up in the open mic, I think I'm going to ask Fritz Eifrig if you're ready to go.
Ready to go. Start with the one from chapbook that I self-published just about 2 years ago now, next month. And this is called Webs. On the porch, it smells like rain and my oolong tea. The grass and sidewalk are still wet, and there's just enough light to read Sushi's poems before the house wakes up. To my left, there is a spider hanging in her threads. Last night, after bucatini and tomato sauce, laughter, talk, and good red wine, we broke her web to get down the steps to say our goodnights and goodbyes. Now she waits in the gray quiet with me, my book, and my small pot of tea. Tiny drops spatter in the breeze. The new web shivers, reflecting light. This is one that was very happily published by, for me, it was very happily published by After Hours, and it's called The Routine Physical. A little darker this morning, overcast. Food for cats and dog, the outside cat, and birds, water for the bowls and bath, water for the garden beds. Too much rain last month, not enough this. Early bird rinsing in the sprinkler. Water in the kettle for my tea. Yesterday's call with my father still rattles. For years, I never thought about when I'd need to quit or when I'd lose interest. All that old man stuff that seemed eternally far away, but here it is. There are peaches on the counter. When the morning light strikes just right, they'll glow, but not today. They're plenty ripe, though. Their musk fills the kitchen with summer heat. One leaks from a bruise, juice going brown in the bottom of the bowl. This is shade. Beneath this spread of oaks, swamp white and chinkapin and burr, the morning grounds crew stacked tangled deadfall between the ranks, but hard against the headstones, they left stands of cornflower for the mowers in the afternoon. And got one last one here. This is called Dreaming is Free. I never lay beneath aspens, breathless in quaking gold light. I never rolled and held close on the clover under dark summer skies. I never took shelter from rainstorms, steaming in thick-beamed horse barns. I never stole one last kiss, half-lidded and hidden in green lakeside mist. But if I had, would the low moon look any different on this winter horizon? Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you. So next, how about Robbie Nestor? Nice to see you this month.
Nice to see you. It's been a little while. The holidays got in the way. So I have a few short poems. This one's called Microcosm. Life's an ocean with all its regions and its moody reaches, coming to rest exhausted on far beaches where the waves lie down like cats and sleep in the warm sand. Meanwhile, beneath the waves, a trillion eggs like stars in nebulae, released by silver-sided tuna, parrotfish green as the jungle, the bellowing of whales, those ocean bars, the dolphins' playful polymorphous explorations in clouds of hatching larvae, all but invisible to the unaided eye. Anywhere we look, life and death in its variety, nursery and crypt, multi-hued meadow and darkest mystery, with its own history and uncertain future, paved with plastic waste, at once alien and extension of our own broken world. And here's one for this month. It's my favorite month. It's my birthday month. October is burning. After, I think it was a photograph by Rob Schaefer, Biltmore Backyard. In autumn, I hunger for seasons, the small fires of October, burning fields to the root, skies suffused with smoke, reducing summer to ash, to leaf mold and yellow sheaves. A ribbon of migrating geese sounds their convivial trumpets. Naked oaks, late season bathers caught in a chill, spread their silver branches, catching the last bit of sun. Covens of pines summon forth winter. The smallest Japanese maples burst into flame. One more shorty? Okay. Rot. The garbage reeks, full of leftovers and moldy lemons, mats of dryer lint, like a skin of algae on the surface of a pond. I ought to take the full bag out, but I'm reluctant to engage with the decay that's at the heart of everything. And yet, if one could study it impartially, without a trace of terror or repulsion, the vivid shades of disillusion rival the desert after rain, spilled paint spreading to the far horizon. Even the odors hover on the edge of almost beautiful, as full as perfume's ripe musk, purple as the jacaranda. It can even be delicious, at least to some. Consider the fragrant funk of some ripe cheeses, durian or kimchi, 1,000-year-old eggs buried in yard until the yolk marbles greenish black. Without rot, none of us could thrive. Everything that grows feeds on what went before. Ocean reefs, seeded by a wealth of putrid whalefall. Ancient cities stacked one atop another, rising from the same foundation, fertile ground for everything to come. Thank you. I'll be featuring next week on the 15th at the Poetry Salon. I put a link to get free tickets. It's at 2:00 Pacific time.
All right.
And I'm reading with Lindsay Royce.
Okay. Well, good luck at the reading. Thank you, Rabbi. It's good to hear you. Bill Harrison, what do you got for us this month?
I got something. Yeah, I do. This is a piece from my work in progress, which is a memoir about my father. This is called Basket Case. Easter Sunday, 1962. The morning was thick and pallid. My father piled our family, my mother Barbara, sister Becky, and me, into our 58 Chevy sedan and drove us from our apartment in Flushing to somewhere in Manhattan. I was 6, my sister 15 months younger. Our nominally Jewish family celebrated Passover, not Easter. So as far as Becky and I knew, this was just another Sunday, except that we'd normally still be in our PJs, parked in front of the TV, waiting for Mom to call us into the kitchen for cornflakes or, once in a while, crisp French toast made with challah. Instead, my sister and I were hustled into dress-up clothes and bundled into the back seat of the car. Mom sat up front, uncharacteristically mute, as my father piloted the Chevy to his destination. Dad pulled over on a sleepy side street and hopped out. It had begun to drizzle. Be back in a jiff. Moments later, he returned, beaming, gliding side by side with a petite woman wearing a canary yellow dress and a toothy smile. Dad held an umbrella over her chestnut beehive, something I'd never seen him do for Mom. Yellow Lady carried 2 enormous baskets, bristling with green and yellow straw, one on each arm. Dad waved Becky and me out of the back seat. My mother did not move. This is Billy and Becky. Kids, say hello. Hello, I squeaked. Becky half hid behind me. The woman crouched and rested the baskets on the damp sidewalk. She rubbed my sandpaper skull, then reached around me to give Becky's arm a little squeeze. The heady aroma of candy and perfume filled me with want. Yellow Lady handed each one of us a basket. Happy Easter, Billy and Becky. Thank you. Thank you. With a brief nod from Dad, my sister and I leapt back into the car and busied ourselves rifling through our treasure. We'd never seen anything like those baskets. Brightly painted eggs basked in a sea of technicolored jelly beans. A giant chocolate bunny wrapped in golden foil perched regally in the middle of the whole wondrous mess. Don't eat it all at once, growled Mom. You'll get a tummy ache. We never saw the Yellow Lady again. The events of that Easter Sunday faded into obscurity. Even at those tender ages, my sister and I somehow already knew not to ask questions about unexplained things. In my late teens, Mom revealed that the woman had been the most recent of my father's girlfriends. He'd been cheating on her from the time Becky and I were toddlers. Yellow Lady wanted Dad to divorce my mother so she could marry him, and she expected him to bring us along as part of the deal. We thought we'd hit the jackpot, but that day must have been a gut punch of humiliation for Mom. Why did she agree to go along for the ride? What kind of perverse chutzpah did it take for my father to schlep all of us to meet with his mistress on Easter so she could ingratiate herself with his children? In late 2019, shortly after Mom died, I asked Becky what she remembered of this incident. She didn't recall it. Perhaps she was a bit too young for the sheer weirdness of that morning to lodge in her long-term memory. As for me, the sight of an Easter basket or a chocolate bunny evokes shards of images from that long ago Sunday. The chilling drizzle, the sickly sweet smell of the Yellow Lady, my mother's bitter, silent collusion. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Bill.
Boy, the family dynamics. So let's see. Patrick Reardon, let's hear from you.
Okay, that's going to be hard to follow, Bill. That was pretty strong stuff. The first of my two poems has to do with my wife and I got married 42 years ago, and we went to Corpus Christi for our honeymoon because it wasn't Hawaii and it wasn't Florida, and we didn't know of anybody who'd ever gone to Corpus Christi. So this is called Corpus Christi Honeymoon. Let us honeymoon in the Texas town with the Latin name. Let us hide out together under the sacrament's cipher. Let us head west into Texas and swing back to wade in Gulf water, cheery of jellyfish, ugly as the thin plastic Walmart bag in the branch of today's winter tree. Let us jacket up in the early autumn cold, not hot Florida, not Hawaii bright, our own clouded place no one else would think of. Medieval as the vestments and the ceremony, two coals burning incense, clouds to the heavens, abandoned pretty much to the harmony of us, our transubstantiation of body and body. Let us foreign ourselves for a week in limbo, watching TV election returns, a relative's midterm victory back home, as if gazing from a pleasant Mars, empty of going and doing, capsuled, cocooned, changed and changing, our own bread and wine. Let us emerge today as we have each morning since that vacant shoreside week, together to fresh surprise and communion. And my second one is, I've been working on a collection of stories with a lot of different characters who have their individual stuff and they interact. And this one has a character named Girl Jane, who is a popular singer. Although that doesn't really have anything to do with this one. It's called Miles. 1,000 miles of city trees. Girl Jane chants two sides of the road. 1,000 miles of crushed blueberry sidewalks. She tells her beads. 1,000 miles of white houses, frame space, safety vaults, safe deposits, mineral deposits. 1,000 miles of hope of left-handed stutterers. She pushes the car to 100, hurrying past memory of the twin. 1,000 miles of cold flame, of 60s girls doing the fruit, of mass intentions for the souls of the dead. 1,000 miles of ancient misread texts. She enters the mountains as if a desert. She beseeches the snow, the precipice, the rock face. 1,000 miles of purgatory. 1,000 miles of functional architecture. She takes up residence in the church choir's shadow, the echo, the blue stained glass. 1,000 miles under the rivers, through the sewer, through immigrant pipes. 1,000 miles of tree sap. She anoints her forehead in a lost sacrament. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It was interesting that you read those poems after Bill was talking about Easter. So, a lot of Catholic imagery. Okay, to close out the open mic tonight is Molly Studdard. Molly, are you there? There she is.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Good to be here, and I'm excited about the features. and I'll start with a poem that just came out in Faux More Lit Mag. The title is Generalized Anxiety Works Quietly While I Try to Sign a Form for a fundraiser. In a weirdly warm spring, they tell me how the kids are going to sell snacks, but really it's us. There's stuff I have to fill out. In the registration tent, when I notice the big maple's not healthy, from the top down, there's an early withering, ab-sized green leaves with black dots. What if it all blows away? What if someone steals the petty cash? When is it all due? When will it be delivered? The other parents understand, but I don't. I cannot sell snacks, I'm sorry. Other adults knew where to sign. Is there a book about it? Is there fungus in the pith? What if I die from the top down? Would anyone clip my kids' toenails, turn the heat down at night, smell the things shoved to the back of the fridge before serving? I filled out the wrong lines. I wrote the wrong year. How come there's never money? Now they're all walking like it's nothing, talking. I'm burning up. I think the maple won't make it. Take my coat. Does anyone see that tree? It's what we need. I said, I need a new form, a blank line, a better pen, a fresh start. You need to notice that tree. Even our own lungs' capillaries look like blossoming branches of mature oaks. Yet, oh, the expirations, the fungus, the annoying balmy rain snow, these dried up pens. There's one. This is the second of 3 poems that I'll read. It's a prose poem, so it's a bit dense, but it is called A View from an Indiana Window. Her rookery is a gnarled husk of oak. She cuts the sky by feathered blade. What acorn whittled at the mud to grow from small to towering? 8 nests, maybe more. Before us, there was ice, mammoths, reeds, wind blew, thick walks of wild onions bent where no floors were. Now she sweeps the dune with a kill in her clutch. Its tail as thin as thread weaves for nothing. Sand sinks where summers burn, and this room too will fill with kelp, husk to silver, add an ashen layer to a row of mounds. Her family shakes the black oak when she lands. The oak's core swells. The grass roots grip the beach like a fragile bowl, and I am a small thing, a future earthen thing. We have no more magnitude. Her forgiveness is far away. Thanks. That just came out in Red Noise Collective. And my last piece, it's all a true story. This is in the Poetry Northwest summer and fall issue this year. And it's another prose poem about swimming where I grew up in Colorado. It is called Horsetooth Rock Cartogram. My friend tells me the round rock covers a cache of haunted money. She wants to go get it. It will take me a long time to respond. She thinks I'm square. Behind the rock, a reservoir. Swimming in a reservoir is stirring a stolen bowl of water. The water is dark and doesn't roll or wave. I backfloat on the vast invention. My friend tells me the reservoir was poured over a town called Stout, and the church steeple still stands underwater. It stabs swimmers every year, she says. It will take me a long time to respond. All around me, rust-brown foothills raise their backsides into the blue sky. Jet contrails streak a road of modernity above us. I dive down, put my ankles in the air. I push the water with my palms, then come up gasping. It will take me a long time to understand my place in the story of tectonic plates rubbing, rocks forming, ponderosa spreading, pines becoming pews in neat rows, hoarding wealth, planning against thirst. Thank you.
Well, that's another wonderful open mic. Let's see if I can get myself figured out. And we're on our way into the part of the evening when we hear the features. But I imagine that there are a few things that we need to take care of first. One of them has, I'm sorry?
I was gonna say, is that a segue?
Yeah. I was actually going to ask for money for the writers, even though I'm never mind. But anyway, there's this idea that we have that poets should be paid for their work. Crazy idea. We used to be able to pass a hat in the in-person days, but now we leave it to you to volunteer to make a contribution on the After Hours website, which is the journal that Al's been publishing for 20 plus years. And it's a PayPal. And it looks like it's going to the journal, but it's not. It's going to poets.
Yes, it's going to the poets. So I'm just about to post that link into the YouTube stream. I put it into our Zoom, but yep, it's always nice to show our appreciation to featured readers tonight, Virgil and Melissa. So I think we should move on to that. And people in YouTube land, I'm about to post the link there so you can show your appreciation too.
Also, I don't know if we're doing it right now or waiting till we start with each poet, but they have a few books to their names. And so they're probably just going to post links to the latest of them. And I don't think I've ever been able to come to a reading with copies of both features books, and I just two beautiful books, salty, but beautiful. So I'm going to start by introducing Melissa Studdard, who I had the opportunity to meet at the Printers Row Book Fair here in Chicago. She's the author of Dear Selection Committee, which is a great title. And I Ate the Cosmos for Breakfast, as well as the chapbook Like a Bird with 1,000 Wings. Her work has been featured by PBS, NPR, New York Times, Guardian, Ms. Magazine, the Best American Poetry blog, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series. And then comes all of the list of some of the best literary journals in the country. She's also won a Lucille Medwick Memorial Award from the Poetry Society, the Penn Review Poetry Prize, a couple of others, and something about the Real Poetry International Film Festival Audience Choice Award, which makes me very curious. I want to hear all about that. I may ask that in the question and answer or the discussion that follows the features readings. So, Molly, are you ready to go?
Hi, I had to unmute myself. So yes, I'm ready. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. And also thank you for hosting, Nina and Al and Bill. I really appreciate all that you've put into this. And it was really nice that you all read first as well. I think that at first I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then I started thinking about what you said about, you know, how people don't want to go first. And I thought it was so neat that y'all go first like that. It's just such a generous thing to do. So thank you. And I've enjoyed the open mic so much. So thank you to the readers. I am going to read some poems from the book that Nina held up, Dear Selection Committee, which is framed as a job application, and it's a letter in part 1 and then an interview in part 2, and it's got a lot of subsections. So I'll read some poems from that, some poems that aren't in books, and some poems that are in other books. And if I feel like it's relevant when I read from Dear Selection Committee, I'll tell you which section of the book it's from, because sometimes that informs a deeper meaning into the work. So the first poem I want to read is called When the Drunk Guy, sorry, I'm going to make a note of the time so I don't run over. Okay. When the drunk guy sent an injured baby goldfinch to the wildlife rehab by Uber. And I don't know if you all remember this, but in 2019, there was a guy who was out drinking with his friends, and he found this injured goldfinch, and he was too drunk to drive it to the rehab. So he just sent it in an Uber alone. And arrived and was saved. So this is my poem. When the drunk guy sent an injured baby goldfinch to the wildlife rehab by Uber, my kid DM'd me 2 smileys, laughing, tears, and the note, "This is something you would do." And I don't know if that meant the drunk part or the goldfinch alone in the backseat part, but I think it's possible life may just be God telling a series of knock-knock jokes. So I run to answer the door, and a golden flower blooms in my chest, and I call it laughter. And I delight in how my kid takes time to message me, and a bouquet of silver flowers blooms in my chest, and I call it having a kid who DMs me. And another bouquet of flowers blooms in my chest, and I pluck them and hand them to a homeless man, and they regrow. And I pluck them and hand them to a robin's nest, and they flutter down into the air around me, and I am a flutter among them, dancing on a picnic table at the park. And I send video of it to everyone I know, and my kid is the first to respond. And I am 1,000 barrels of wine, pouring myself into the world. So thank you. My second poem is When the Birdsong Rings Human, and it's from my chapbook, Like a Bird with 1,000 Wings, which is a set of lyric poems in response to the Conference of the Birds, which is a long narrative poem. And these were written to be interspersed with short musical pieces by the composer Christopher Theophanides, who's also my boyfriend. So I'm going to read that. And this is in response to the part where the hoopy bird forms a flock of birds, and they're going off to seek their king, this divine and mysterious leader. Okay. When the bird song rings human, the hoopy bird forgets its tongue, like a time traveler accidentally leaving a glove in a year that hasn't happened. The tongue wanders strange gray streets, its sour and sweet buds lit up with the hoopy's hunger, glowing like a jellyfish in the rain. Now the tongue knows no house can promise safety, not the sheath of mouth, not even the body which laughs at the body of time, stretched like a poolside lizard across dimensions. The tongue bellows for the hoopy across the green. The hoopy hears what he thinks is an echo, not blazing, but persistent, ever present, a little fuzzy, like a radio that's not coming in well, or the hum and buzz of the street lamps and telephone wires he knew in that other world. Everything the bird means to say turns ancient at the root and falls off, because God is not a clock nor a sundial reaching forward with narrow arms. God is a million tiny pieces, like glitter or destiny, breaking flesh into astonishment, breaking pain into daggers of light. So my next poem is also from Dear Selection Committee. And it's kind of, I was kind of an awkward, artsy kid in Texas where everybody was like athletic and very different from me. And this is a little bit about that feeling. And I think, as artists and writers, so often, we feel on the margins of things. And okay, so this is called Inside the Beige Brick House, the Beige Rooms. Inside the beige brick house, the beige rooms and beige shirted people sit beautiful as unbuttered biscuits, their awful loveliness upon me. They want me drier than wheat and so still no marbles can roll from my head. I want summer flashing the yard red with begonias. I want ladder-backed woodpeckers knocking at the gables and crepe myrtle blossoms blown down like hot pink cotton in a storm. I'm embarrassing like that, a walking faux pas no one wants to be seen with at the mall. I know compassion like the arms of a cactus. I know the scent of earth, revealing her secrets after a much-needed rain. I buried everything they told me to bury. Then I dug it up again. And that, as a writer, we unearth. The next one is called Modus Operandi. I put ranch dressing on the Greek salad. I stand in my front yard in the rain and yell, I'm the biggest waterfall in this desert. When people invite me to parties, I say no, then show up anyway. I bring my cat dressed in a graphic t-shirt with an image of another more attractive cat. I tell everyone I've just returned from my honeymoon, and when they ask to see pictures, I show them the cover of the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. I like kissing people I don't know, sending flowers to random addresses and signing the card, eternally yours, God. I'm a window cracked in the rain. My name is sitting down and standing back up for no reason. My motto is wings flapping. You should come back into my room if you miss me. I'll be there soon. I'm 1,000 miles away on a different bed. And thank you. The next poem is called When My Lover Says Hippopotamonstrosis Quipedaliophobia, which, if you're not familiar with that word, it's a fear of long words. When my lover says hippopotamonstrosis quipedaliophobia, I say it's not fear that matters, but where you bury it. So he buries his tongue inside me, and I tell him, sometimes I'm more afraid of hearing what I know than knowing it. I want to lick the words, the vowels out of all words longer than 3 syllables. I want to find every horse led against its will into battle and tie it to a cloud. What the sky said to the wind to make it bend the daffodils, it also said to my lover's lips. So I turn over and over inside the field of myself. I offer my flowers to his centerpiece, my sunset to his lake. Tell me, who never wakes up afraid? The night before the crucifixion, when Jesus asked if he really had to, death showed up dressed in yellow petals and handed him a crown of thorns. Don't make me say what I'm willing to do for love. I'm already lugging my cross up the hill. And This is a new poem. It's not in a book yet. It came out recently in the Mom Egg Review. And it is called I Dreamed Mary, Mother of Jesus. I dreamed Mary, Mother of Jesus, led the La Leche League of Houston, Texas. She had the most magnificent breasts, like little molehills that people made a mountain out of. When I asked her advice for rearing a child, she said, "Don't tell them they're not immortal. If they find out, they'll die." Her brain was bigger than 1,000 books and so powerful it could beat the internet at chess. I told her all my problems. I asked her all my questions. She said the distance around heartache is shorter than you would think. When her son was old enough to speak, he said her milk was better than cookies and cream ice cream or melted M&Ms. And who could doubt it when at her breast, eternity popped open like a broken bra strap? Who could doubt the palate of a baby training to turn water into wine? I think, when my daughter was born, I think those of you who have children or nieces and nephews, you understand there's this moment where you feel like so simultaneously mortal and immortal, and so perfect and flawed, and you're part of this thing that humans have, just been doing forever. And that's kind of how I was feeling when I wrote that poem. The next poem I wrote during the pandemic. I had several friends who died, sadly, just in a 2-week period. There were so many, and I just didn't know what to do with it, and I wrote this poem. All the people who died and their hopes that died with them, and my sad ass dangly silver earrings. 6 of my people in 10 days, so I order 59 packs of dangly silver earrings and make caprese salad from thinly sliced watermelon instead of tomato. No one can tell me what death is, because in death's mansion, the lights are off and we can't read the manual in the dark. Inside the second floor bathroom now, a small boy sits, depressing as a public restroom urinal. I hand him a clock and a body-piercing gun. He hands me a mirror, which I use to apply foundation, contour, and concealer to all the ill-digested news visiting my face as blemishes. Peace is on a far shelf. The more earrings I have, the more I can afford to lose. So my next poem is called In Praise of Darkness, or Why You Should Turn Off the Lights. And I wrote this, I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Manasota Key in Florida to a residency. It's at the Hermitage Artist Retreat. And the first time I was there, I didn't know about the hatchling turtles and how you had to turn off the lights. So, because what happens is they get confused by the lamplight and they think it's the moonlight and they don't go where they're supposed to go. And so the Hermitage got a citation, and my penance was writing this poem for them to post under the light switch. So the turtles mistake our lamplight for a slice of moon, the way a human child thinks the sun is a lemon lollipop dropping from the hand of the great bank teller in the sky. And I can't tell you why what's scoot-shelled and strong-nailed is also so delicate beneath the armor, or why it is we so often bend to meet the systems of our own destruction. It's like a circle boxed into a square and circled again. On one end of the planet, an amorous 190-year-old tortoise named Jonathan mates with his 2 favorite lovers, Emma and Fred. And at the other, loggerhead hatchlings can't tell the difference between light and light, as their bodies cling, codified but confused, to the cycles of a burning world. I've heard it said it's turtles all the way down, an unspooling thread of flipper and tail, salt and jaw. That's why every poet eventually drinks enough wine to drown in a moon some careless god dropped into a sea. Poets know darkness is the place we all go to be beautiful. They know come nightfall, that artificial orb, the lamp, must be hidden, fastened back into its origin, the human mind. I think I've got 4 or 5 minutes left, so okay, I'll read a few more, but if I go too long, just start throwing tomatoes at me, virtual tomatoes. Okay, so this one is called My Boyfriend's Body's Covered in Newspaper. I think maybe this is what Nina meant when she said salty. So he sent me an article from something that people were posting on Twitter, and I don't want to give too much of it away, so I'll just read the poem. My boyfriend's body's covered in newspaper, and the headline says, penis-shaped subtropical storm Melissa arouses commentary on Twitter. And I'm like, I told you. And he's like, will you still love me when my shoreline starts eroding? Life's never dull when your name's Melissa and your mascot is a huge, erect, disembodied penis hovering over the Atlantic, which is to say, abso-fucking-lutely, I'll still love you. What surprises me about the body is resilience. Mine has been a shot glass, a punching bag, a lie detector, a cigarette filter, a crash test dummy. Oh, how it opens and opens anyway when passion comes near. So I reign 7 days and 7 nights inside the penis outline. I whisper the safe word to the ocean in case it's had enough. And when my beloved asks what time I'll be over, I say, I'd travel 1,000 years for one night of this wonder. I almost read that poem in front of his students one time, and he said, oh, maybe pick a different poem, which was equally racy. No, just kidding. So the next poem is a new poem. It's called Please Don't Feed Alphabet Soup to the Poets. And actually, Virgil was asking about the baskets behind me, and some of these baskets just have words in them. Just when I get a word that I love, I just throw it into the basket. And, and then when I'm writing, sometimes I'll just dump it out and pull out a word I like and see what happens with it. So I was kind of thinking about the baskets and also about my cat who was trying to eat the words from my basket. And I was like, no, those are my words, Jack. And it just occurred to me how strange it all was. So I wrote this poem. And I might do some air quotes because I might need to distinguish between the word, the meaning of the word, and the word as the word itself. So please don't feed alphabet soup to the poets. Hand a goat a piece of paper with the word goat, and it will eat it. Goats don't know the word goat. They only know the silence of having no words to rub together and how to climb mountains by being stickier than gravity. Hand a goat a piece of paper with the word gravity, and it will eat it. The goat will eat gravity, which means nothing to the goat, but everything to the poet, for whom gravity is also gravitas and gravitate and holiday gravy, because the poet won't eat words or food made from words. Place the word God on an altar for the gods, and the gods will eat it. Don't put the goat on the altar. Put goat on the altar. Put God on the altar. Don't play with real bones like the butcher. Don't play with your food. Play with words. Wrap your paper in paper labeled paper. Then you will really know what paper is. The essence of the sheet, not its symbols. Paperness, wordness, goatness, godness. Write the word word and put it in a basket labeled words. Then you will know what a word is, how heavy, how attractive, how tasty, which ones to salt, which ones to ketchup, which ones to pepper. You will know which words to feed to goats, and which to feed the gods, and which to bury at the foot of the mountain, so you will be light enough to climb it. I think I'll stop there.
That was just so beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. Let's give a hand and to Melissa and buy her book, Dear Selection Committee. And I will ask you in the conversation afterwards to read some of those section titles, because it really does show how things are, how you're playing with that as a form. Well, now I get to introduce Virgil Suarez, who was born in Havana, Cuba in 1962, which makes you younger than me. I just want you to know that for what it's worth. At the age of 12, he arrived in the United States, received an MFA from Louisiana State in 1987. He is the author of 10 collections of poetry, including 90 Miles Selected and New, and The Painted Bunting's Last Molt, which I love, published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. But he hasn't had his last molt yet. He's got a most recent book called American Chernobyl, which is full of not only poetry, but also some of his art and photography. His work has appeared in a multitude of magazines and journals all over the place. Recipient of a National Endowment of the Arts grant and a Florida Arts grant. He lives with his wife and co-editor Delia Hoy, and they make their home in Florida. Virgil, I'm looking forward to hearing your work. Give a hand.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Bill. Thank all of you. What a wonderful, absolutely wonderful 2 hours this has been and will be. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly listening to you all, and I thank you for your wonderful words. Melissa, your work delights me to no end. It's bravo to you. Later on, the only question I think I'm going to have for you is, please tell me how you're able to look so good reading your work without actually looking like you're reading your work. It must be some sort of magic trick. I love it. So, I will ask you that, or if you can answer later during the question and answer period. This book is very strange because ever since I was in the 8th grade, we would have these textbooks that would have both the poem and then an illustration. And that sort of always stayed with me. During the pandemic and before the pandemic, I had spent a few years learning Photoshop, InDesign. I've learned a lot of photography. I consider myself an amateur photographer. And so for years I had been doing art and collecting photographs of these places that I would find in the middle of nowhere. And so during the pandemic, this idea came to me since I already had the skills of putting together a book that from cover to cover I had done completely by myself. And I knew doing it all along that I would not probably be able to find a publisher for it, because both of my art and my photography are not vetted by anybody. Nobody knows, and probably nobody cares. But I wanted to do this collection where intermittently I would have poetry and photographs and my art. And so I decided to publish it myself. It was a book that I intended anyway to pass on to friends and family and whoever wanted it. I uploaded it onto Amazon, figuring that based on the nature of my own career, where I've published, I think the only two books I've published back to back in the same place were in Pittsburgh, and with my fiction at Arte Público Press out of Houston. And so I was very familiar with having to move around. Unfortunately, my wonderful editor at the University of Pittsburgh Press has passed away this year, Ed Ochester, who was a dear friend and an amazing editor. And so I felt that this book was basically a project that I had to do. And so it's up on Amazon, American Chernobyl. I was delighted by the fact that they did a good job with the quality of the paper and the heartstock and all of that stuff. So I'm going to read you some of the few poems that are in. The book is divided into thirds, but you get a little bit of everything along the way. This is a poem called The Cotton Ball Queen. In 1970, Havana, Cuba, my mother took it upon herself to inject B12 on the butt cheeks of as many neighbors as brought doses and paid for her service. My mother wanted to be a nurse, but was not a nurse. The house filled with women waiting for their shots, and I, age 8, watched them lower one side of their pants or shorts or pull up a dress to expose their flesh to the needle. The needle disappeared into the flesh. My mother swabbed their skin with a cotton ball drenched in alcohol after each shot and threw it in a bucket by the kitchen door. When she was not looking, I'd reach for a handful and went outside to look at how the blood darkened. I wrapped my toy soldiers in the used cotton. They were wounded. Cuba was sending military personnel to Vietnam. My mother shot up more people, enfermos as she called them. When my father came home, there was no trace of anyone ever having been over. My mother expected me to keep her secrets. On the mud fort I had built in the patio, all my soldiers lay wounded, bloodied, and dying. At night, I dreamt of white pillowcases filling with bloody cotton balls. In the United States, my mother worked in a factory sewing zippers at 10 cents a piece, 25 years. She never looked up from her machine. Her fingers became arthritic. Every time I cut myself shaving, I reach for a cotton ball to soak up the blood. Blood is a red bird taking flight against the darkening sky. This is a poem that one of my youngest daughter gave to me. And even though I was familiar with the place before she told me about it, and she had obviously a personal experience with it, this is a poem called The Body Farm. My youngest tells me all about the body farm experience, where you walk with your human anatomy class through a few isolated acres of corpses arranged in different scenarios and left to decompose. Inside cars, blooming under a tree, laid down in a ravine, all putrefying, nature taking its sweet time, birds plucking hairs with which to line nests, flies laying eggs, the ants who make quick work of whatever salt resides in the lacrimal glands. Buzzards gather rather funereal and gaunt. No shadows here, just students with perfume plugs in their nostrils. I can smell it even through the phone. What is the difference in death? One day you blow out a candle, the next you're no better than mulch. My mother-in-law called it a light bulb dimming. That's the signal. And I see a man rush into the centrifugal force of atoms colliding at the Chernobyl reactors. His skin blushes with the tincture of poison blood. Listen, that smell right now? Yes, it's your own body sending the message. Last night's cabbage and boiled boudin relish the perfume of the living. Everything must go. At the hospitals, they systematically give immigrant women hysterectomies. Their caged children sleep wrapped in tinfoil blankets and eat cheese whiz in the middle of the moonlit night, dreaming of endless sales at long gone toy stores and flea markets where old men sell parts for cars no longer made. I found a rusty edge razor with a mother of pearl handle with which to shave my scarred face. At the corner, another brick and mortar store goes out of business, a furniture store announcing their demise. Everything must go, even us, even them, the people on this planet. You smell the ash and the breeze, reactors melting somewhere, lights buzz and flicker. This is your last chance to plunder for the stuff to keep in storage. You never know when you will need that wig or those sets of dentures. Go ahead and smile. And I'll read you a couple more. This is, I think it's one of my favorite poems of the book. This is called A Love Song for My Hematologist. As he daintily places a stethoscope on my skin, first the heart, my left bundle branch blocked heart, where no electricity has seen the light of day. His breath is fig marmalade sweet. His eyes show where love hurt him bad. There's great sadness in the way he holds the metal under my double D man breasts. He is lost to the rhythms of my soon-to-be defibrillated heart. He tells me I will not die from this, but that I should try to get more exercise, go out for short walks, stand often and flex my body so that my legs won't atrophy. I love this man like I have loved all of my doctors, male or female. They know I am not human, perhaps. They can feel it, but don't say it. And I appreciate the confidence by which they pretend that I am already dead in their hands, a familiar ghost they've come to depend on, as if I often ravage their ears with my own stories of excess, or how the first responders at Chernobyl rushed in with their power only to become fireflies in the night, flashing their nuptial invitations in the darkness of fields. The human body feels terror first in the hair follicles, or at least that's what I feel when I look in the mirror and catch a glimpse of my 60-year-old self. How we got here, I do not know, but I can tell you it's been a wild ride, first in the dirt of Havana, then later in the cold of Madrid, and now in the humidity of North Florida, where the birds are falling dead from the skies. I can tell he is done. He tells me I won't be dying today, and so I kiss him on the lips. Here's one called Nepenthes northiana, which lately has become one of my favorite plants. Telemachus dove in with eyes open, expecting news of his father, but the man in line, stripped naked, go over the time schedule, no more than a few minutes with the shovel, sweat rings under the eyes, pickaxes in hand to claw the striations of the tunnel walls that blush by torchlight. They knew not what they were doing. They did it for the money, for family, for pregnant girlfriends who still drank vodka on the weekends. Inside they went, intoxicated by the aroma of soft earth. Those who escaped lived in to tell the tale, the malaise of youth spent repeating the sins of their fathers, smoking, drinking, singing into the dying, glowing embers of a campfire where the sirens lured them back into the vortex. All right, one more. If I can find it. The thing about this book too is that it's a little big. It's like larger than 8.5 by, it's almost 9 by 12, which is, I meant for it to be like a coffee tabletop type of book. So I'll end with this, hopefully this will not be my last book. I'll end with this poem. The waters this time And it's got a little epigram from Memphis Minnie. If it keeps on raining, the levee is going to break. Happy shotgun houses swallowing Katrina's deluge, bloated bodies floating down the street, rare fish in the morning light, after thunder and lightning punctuated the night with the call and response of the living, oil slick water catching the light crow's iridescent feathers, folks bracing each other on rooftops, weather vanes pointing anywhere but here, many more drown inside their houses, a maelstrom of furniture and keepsake, a fall painting of a white Jesus plummeting to darker depths. A boy screams in the distance, he does not want to leave, grandmother naked in the water. Such horror does not know the color of electric water. John boats take people in quartets, their waterlogged hope diminishing returns of someone left behind, fetid air, sky the color of zombies, like in the setting of a B movie, except this is as real as it gets. And what of a government that abandons people? Huddle masses at the Superdome, an egg-shaped carapace from the sky, bleached and pockmarked with trash and bitterness. If you are Black, you are shit out of luck. But so it always goes in this country of sick spin and jive turkeys. The water offers no baptism, no rebirth for all those busts to Baton Rouge, Houston, and beyond. Who will come back home? Someone says they are trying to whiten the Crescent City view car of dreams. No, sir, not this water, not this time, not ever again. The waters this time cannot be forgiven. Next time the levee breaks, there will be hell to pay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, I wanted to be able to pin some of, or share some of the art that you have in there. And, you know, I may just kind of launch right into the conversation. So, Bill, if you wouldn't mind sticking us together on the screen. And
I'm all over it.
thanks. You know, in the past, I've called this have I called it a Q&A? And anyway, just giving the impression that everyone should just jump in, but that can make for a chaotic conversation. So just know, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. And Bill, you'll just let me know. Two wonderful, wonderful readings. You both have very different music to your words, and in so many ways are so very different. But I think as we talk, we're going to get a sense of the cross-hatching. I just want to ask a couple of, well, a question that might be for you both. I want to hear about the relationship between poetry, your poetry, and other forms of media. We didn't hear anything about, there was a film made of your work, Melissa. And yeah, can you start with that?
Sure, yeah. So I was really lucky quite a few years ago. My first collection of poetry, I Ate the Cosmos for Breakfast, the title poem of that was selected for a motion poems film, which is really just, they do an incredible job. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a website and all of that. And the filmmaker that I was paired up with, Dan Sickles, is just an amazing, amazing filmmaker. He's won all kinds of awards, and so he just made this beautiful film. And the poem is about, it's about interconnectivity, and it's like literally it's about a pancake. But if you've read Thich Nhat Hanh, it's sort of the Thich Nhat Hanh like idea of, being contemplative when you're eating and being present with your food. And so that's kind of what the poem's about. But then this incredible filmmaker made the film where, didn't have any pancakes in it. It didn't have any syrup in it. It was just, he took the deeper ideas of what the poem was about and gave it new imagery, which I think is incredible, because it would have been so easy to just use the imagery that I already had, but he really made it, the whole film, into an entirely new work of art. And so it ended up just doing some great things. It was featured at a couple of big film festivals. And then a few years later, a lady named Fran Sanders, who is a big supporter of poets in Houston and runs this organization called Public Poetry, started an international film festival called Real Poetry, REEL Poetry, and asked if she could feature that as one of the films. And it ended up getting the Audience Choice Award at that film festival. And Robbie's asking if I have a link for it. Yes, I will look up a link for it in a little while, but it's also on my website, just melissastuddard.com. You can easily go there and find that film. I have a whole page on collaboration. So
Melissa, what was the nature of the collaboration, or did you just kind of give it over and let go?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I've done a lot of different kinds of collaborations, and you're right. Sometimes you just hand it over and that's that. And other times there's a lot of back and forth. We communicated a little bit, but not much at all. He just took it and did his thing with it. He was filming in, oh gosh, it's been so long now. I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing, but it was somewhere beautiful in South America in a rainforest. And I think it was South America. Yeah. And so he just had the most beautiful imagery, and he just took it there. He filmed this gorgeous film, and I saw it when it came out at the same time everyone else saw it. Costa Rica. Thank you, Robbie. I was like, I'm not quite getting it right. Yeah. And so, then after that, I saw him like on Twitter or something, and it was the first time we really, really communicated outside of that world. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like this long lost relative or something that you've never spoken with, because our minds had been really interacting, even it's kind of like when you read someone who's not alive anymore, you feel your mind interacting with theirs, even though you're not literally speaking with them. And I felt that kind of interaction with him. And then, yeah, so yeah, thank you.
There's something about that, about the difference between both kinds of, where it's an active collaboration or when it's a letting go. And if we get there tonight, great. Otherwise, we should have a longer conversation in some other world. But Virgil, you may have some thoughts about collaboration, but it seems to me that in American Chernobyl, you're collaborating with yourself. And I'm wondering about that process, and to what degree, if at all, the poems were meant to interact with any of your art or not.
Well, a couple of things happened right before and during the pandemic. One of them was, of course, that I was already had clocked in many years taking photographs. I was painting. And one of the reasons why I started painting a good 15, almost 20 years ago, was because I saw myself spending all of my time writing poetry. And personally, I found myself repeating myself and found myself rather bored. So I thought I'd have a different look at the things that I cared about through the art, and then through the kind of I do a lot of urban exploration, and I felt the need to write an essay to address that, because anybody who knows me knows that I don't move around. I'm not the kind of person to trespass and walk around for miles. So I do most of my photography right out of my car. So it's a matter of trying to figure out how close I can get to these places. And sometimes I get out of the car and take pictures. But anyway, I bring the stuff home, I look at it, or I paint it. And more often than not, they do begin to inform. There are times when I'm stuck on a poem that I'll do 2 or 3 paintings and then feel loose enough to be able to finish that. I think the glue here was that I had already been writing these poems about my dissatisfaction with the American landscape, not only politically, but physically. The fact that we are now all living between Walmart and Home Depot, and the buildings we love. And if you don't believe me, I would urge you to visit Detroit, which is a city with great history and great buildings. And most of those buildings are, if they're not in the Historical Society record, they're going to be torn down and turned into something else. So the landscape is constantly changing, and I felt like and I was very aware of not only the 3 Mile Island fiasco, but also Chernobyl. And I started thinking about ways of combining these things into this book, which was the other reason why I felt iffy about sending it to a publisher, because I wasn't sure what they were going to, whether they were going to say, listen, you're a poet, get rid of the art and get rid of the photographs. And I wasn't really willing to do that, because I think these pieces inform each other, right? And just for my basic need of being able to look at a poem and then look at the picture or look at the art, I've always loved that. And I think, there's a long tradition of poets and writers in this country who are also painters, watercolorists. I'm thinking of Ashbery, people like that, who are pretty good, doing art. But that's the thing, once you get known for a particular art form, it's very difficult to come out and have somebody else say, oh, and by the way, he's also a great artist. Right? Or a good artist. It doesn't have to be great, but that's usually very rare. And so I was, big part of me was fighting against that kind of putting handles on the artist. I always tell my students, and I always recommend that they watch. This is a film that came out during the pandemic, and I thought it was brilliant, by a young man named Bo Burnham. The documentary is called Inside on Netflix, and it's all about him filming himself during a year, if not the first, the second year of the pandemic. And I was amazed by the fact that here was a kid who, he knows music well, he knows how to play instruments, but he got a camera, did the lighting, did the cinematography, did the special effects. He did it all. And I kept thinking, well, at one time, this would cost you a lot of money. Now it's not going to cost you anything. You can literally use your phone and do this kind of work. So I'm constantly telling my students, look, if you're bored with one thing or you feel iffy about, try something else. I've always dreamt of having like a channel on YouTube where we pay Werner Herzog to read and film people's poems, just like what Melissa's work sounds like in that film, right? Because you do need.
My mind is really kind of wrapped around this idea you shared about when people get stuck in their writing. And you're not talking about writer's block. You're talking about kind of getting narrowed by the activity of writing and needing to kind of step back. And I think that with some poets who've got a fair career that they've been traveling, sometimes you see that tiredness where people are just kind of, like you said, maybe doing the same kind of thing. They're kind of stuck in a groove. And I don't know, Melissa, if you've ever experienced that in yourself or observed it in others, such that it's registered in terms of how you want to practice your career as a creative person.
Yeah, thank you, actually. And thank you, Virgil, too, for bringing that up. I think you're so right about how, I mean, for me, Nina, the way you were wanting to distinguish between this, what we're talking about, and writer's block, I think of this as a bit of like maybe a stagnation. You know, you get a little maybe repetitive in your imagery. You're not bringing enough in, so you're not getting new ideas. You feel like you're imitating yourself rather than collaborating with yourself, as Virgil does so wonderfully. And I think, you know, I think he's so right that the way to get back in is to find something else that ignites you and to use that as a way back in. And for me, one of the times that I became stagnant was, so I started belly dancing when I was around like 48 or 49, because I had always wanted to dance. And when I was a kid, I couldn't take dancing lessons because there was like one teacher in my town in Texas, and she was mean, and my mom didn't want me around her. And so I just never did dance. And then the only thing for like adult women who, you know, was single at the time, to do was belly dancing. You know, they don't teach ballet for, you know, 50-year-old women. So I started belly dancing. I fell in love with it. It's incredibly cultural and wonderful. And I got into this like sort of flow of dancing and writing, and I would use the energy from the dance and bring it to the page and just go back and forth and have the music going. And then I got in a really bad car accident, and I broke my ribs. And, you know, you just can't belly dance with broken ribs. So at that point, when my ribs were broken, I remember just like lying in bed, like, why, you know, why is this happening to me? I don't have that surge of energy and this other art like coming through me onto the page. And I felt really stagnant for a little while, and I had to find other ways to go into it. And it was through doing some ekphrastic work, just reading other poets, just trying to, you know, look at things and have experiences that were outside my typical days so that I would have, you know, fresh thoughts. And I also started writing my dreams down every morning, because, you know, our dreams will provide us so much in terms of symbols and imagery and all of that. And I found that the more I wrote it down, the stronger my dreams became. And that became a new, really strong source for me too.
You know, I want to give each of you a chance to ask the other person a question. Virgil, I don't know if you're going to want to ask how she manages to look so good reading poetry, but do you want to ask each other any questions? You're muted, Virgil.
Unmute. There we go. How about now? Yes.
Yeah.
Belly dancing with broken ribs. That's got to be a great title for a poem, a book. That image. And you know, one of the things that I thought about with that is that, you know, I'm always very concerned with the elderly, in particular in this country where everybody has been working now for 80 years and nobody has developed any kind of a hobby or a pastime. My wife finally started gardening because she's also a writer, but I said, you better have something else to occupy your time and mind. So she's gardening and enjoying it. But I've always worried about people with either no hobbies or no interests. And that's, I would say, a large percentage of the population in the United States is people who will tell you, I don't have time for that. And in particular, when the children leave, that you begin to get all that time back for yourself, you've got to be able to, to apply yourself to some other things. You can't be writing all the time. No, my question about your technology was, I've always watched people read, and the only times that I've been wowed, and this is like the third time that I get wowed with a reader, in your case, when you're listening to somebody on stage and they are reciting poems from their memory, which I cannot do, I've always found that amazing. And so you came close, even though you're not live. We're not together. But you are, in fact, delivering. You're making eye contact. You're reading. It is marvelous. I mean, it creates a wonderful experience. So I'm wondering, how is it like a teleprompter, or what is it?
Thank you. First of all, thank you. That's very nice. And I'm happy to share the way I read when I'm doing a Zoom reading. And basically, I started doing this because I really, I missed the feeling of feeling connected to an audience or to the people, the other readers. And I'm very, I don't know how to, gosh, what's the word? Like, empathetic. Like, I very much need to feel the energy of the people who I'm around, or I just feel sort of in this weird little bubble. And so I wanted to be able to read and look at people at the same time, so that I could feel present. And so what I do during a Zoom reading is I narrow the Zoom so that everybody is in a couple of boxes on taking up about, or not a couple of boxes, a few boxes taking up like a third or a fourth of the screen over to the left-hand side. And then I get a document. I put the poems that I want to read in the document, and then I make it about 2/3 of the screen. And so I can look at everyone, and I can look at the poems, and the poems are directly under the camera. And I'm really looking back and forth. I don't recite them, I read them, and I'm just looking back and forth between you all and the poems, because I want to make eye contact. I want to see what, I want to see if people are, doing this, or, if they're engaged. I need that, as a reader.
That's
well, it was very, very natural, and very, the delivery was perfect.
Thank you.
The Russian judges would be proud.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think the question that I want to ask you, I want to I love what Nina said about you collaborating with yourself. And it's so true. I mean, it's not just that it's all you. It is like these two parts of you that are working together. And so, I mean, first of all, I loved your reading. It was beautiful. And I would love to see some of the artwork. And I think there might be some behind you that you might be able to easily show us. But I did want to ask if the process for you is, I mean, I think I already know the answer to this, but I kind of wanted to hear you say something about it. I'm assuming it's not always the same. I mean, sometimes does the poem come first and then the painting, or sometimes the painting comes first and then the poem, or do you go back and forth where you're painting a little bit and then writing and then coming back to the painting, or how does that work for you?
Well, sometimes, I mean, I used to, when it was just poetry, which was a huge part of my life, it was poetry all the time. I mean, I am manic compulsive, amongst other things. And I think eventually somebody mentioned to me, it's like, have you ever looked at Hypergraphia? It's a term, it's a condition where you cannot stop writing. And so after spending days upon days clocking in 8 to 12 hours writing, I realized that there was something wrong. I mean, and now that I'm older, my legs become numb. I have to figure out what, so now having these other things, in particular, I have the art studio outside in the screened in porch, and my office computer where I do the writing is in my office. So walking back and forth, sometimes I do stuff in the morning and then come out here when it's more pleasant. Now that the temperature is changing, I might be spending more time inside, i.e. probably working. I am working on a new book. But the art and the poetry are informing themselves in very real, wonderful ways, which is that I never put any color into my poetry. And all of a sudden, now that I'm mixing colors and I'm using colors and I'm trying to think, what color is this? I put that as a layer and texture in the poem. So I'm always conscious of at least putting in a color into each poem. But I love doing both of them, and I love taking turns back and forth. There are times when I don't feel like writing a poem, but then looking through either my sketchbook or the paintings. I mean, I'll show you, this is actually a collaboration I'm working with a friend of mine who is a graffiti artist. That's very, very big, by the way. It's like 36, I don't know if you get 36 by 48, I think. So it's just a matter of coming out here and getting loose, splattering. I'm always explaining to my students, it's like, don't fall in love with your words. Don't fall in love with your images. Try to get loose enough so that you basically end up with a poem that eventually needs a little bit more guidance, more work, but be loose about it. Think, free random access memories in your head. Do all of these things that when you're working on a blank canvas, you have to spatter paint, we tend to be a lot more careful when we're writing poetry, but I've learned that more often than not, I will just start listing things that are coming to my head instantly. You were talking about dreams. I am on Lexapro. I've been on Lexapro now for a good 15 years, and I think it's a marvelous, marvelous medication. But one of the things that it does is it gives me these intensely vivid dreams or nightmares. It all depends. They change every night. But I love them because they're so vivid. And then in the morning, sometimes I still have these very fresh things that have happened that I maybe didn't know about or had not thought about for a while. And so that ends up coming into the work, in particular, the poetry. So, I mean, I try to make it so that it's all good. I'm at an age now, and I recommend this to anybody above, 50. Whatever work you've done is already the work that you've done, and you don't need to prove yourself to anybody. And so do the work that keeps you insanely happy and insanely motivated. And eventually when we leave the planet, that's what it is, which is why I give away my art. I don't sell my art. I give it to family and friends because I think in the back of my mind, I always think, well, they'll put it up somewhere. And then one day when I'm not here, kind of, hokey, but I don't have to prove anything to anybody, and I love doing it. It's in the doing, right? And I feel happy. Yeah.
What was that, Melissa?
I said, I'll be sending you my address because he said he gives me
Okay, yeah, please do, everybody.
You guys are both, I mean, there's something in the air about embodiment. And I'm not really sure how to ask a question about this, but you've both been
Did you say embodiment?
Embodiment, like like what it feels like in your body, either if you think about your body as the vehicle through which you are a creator. Also, we were talking about that and you were both using hand gestures to describe the belly dancing, and that there is some relationship in terms of that kind of juices moving through the body. And then the other thing you mentioned, Virgil, had to do with that feeling in your body when you've been writing for too long. And so
it's just it's a reminder to me that I've become nothing but just a brain, right? I always think, and my pitfall is that I love food. I love to eat really well, and I love food all of the time. And so that, if you don't exercise, eventually you are going to gain weight. I'm 5'8" and I weigh almost 300 pounds. So it's very difficult. But again, I'm going to do what I need to do to maintain myself fairly healthy, but also happy with what I'm doing. So, and I have a plethora of medical professionals who are seeing that I live another year. But this is an argument that I have with my doctor, my general physician. I tell her, why is it that you never mention one of the biggest stressors for humans, at least in this country, if not the entire world, which is work? Notice work is never mentioned as a stressor, the way that, overeating or smoking or drinking too much. And she says, well, because everybody's got to work. And I go, no, I understand that, but it's one of the big stressors in my life. And she goes, but you have a wonderful job. I go, yes, but even teaching at a certain age, it becomes a little bit too much. And so, I am planning to retire sooner rather than later, and I'm going to miss it, and I'll be able to teach. But what I want to do is just live the moment. Every day is a gift, and I'm going to take advantage of it until the clock runs out, I guess. But I mean, I'm very aware of what I'm doing to my body. I mean, but I'm also prepared not to come up with any excuses. I know cigars give us lung cancer, all of that stuff. But when I'm smoking and I'm in a kind of a meditative moment, I'm in my world, I'm in my zone, and I find it extremely useful as somebody who creates something else.
Well, you were so you've been talking about shifting into your physicality after you've been spending too much time in mental work. And I'm wondering how you, Melissa, think about embodiment, or like the channel through your body that maybe relates to your writing, maybe is on a different track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I really appreciate this conversation, and it's actually something I think about a lot, because like Virgil, I've noticed to myself just getting into these modes where I'm sitting writing for so long, and I'm teaching. I have 150 students every semester, which is a lot. And I'm grading papers. I'm always at the computer, writing, teaching. And I have started talking about retirement recently too. And somebody asked me, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, I'm going to move back into my body, because I mean, sometimes I feel like I don't live inside my body. Like Virgil said, I feel like I'm a head, I'm a head. And I don't think that I can write well as a head. I want to be, it has to move through the body. Poetry is about rhythm and the breath. And, poetry is, to me, it's different from all language is great to me, but poetry in particular, it acts on the body and moves through the body in a way that other language doesn't. you know, it roosts there, it lands there and stays there, the rhythms of it, you know, it moves you in a certain way. And I think that's why in ancient times people used poetry as a way to remember things, you know, the repetition and the rhythms and all of that. It helped people remember important things. And I mean, I think you're so right. We can't forget that that is such an important aspect of writing. And if that means that you're sitting there tapping, if it means that you're reading it aloud so you can feel it move through your body instead of just through your mind, it's that whole, you know, not to be too woo-woo or new age about it, but, you know, the body, mind, soul connection. I mean, I feel like to write well, you know, we need it all. And there are also obviously physiological things, blood flow to the brain that doesn't happen if you're just sitting there staring at a screen.
Yep.
So,
You know, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's getting close to wrap up time, but I think, Bill, if you can bring Al into this conversation, mainly because I was thinking about where we started tonight, Al, with you saying that that poem came more from your head. Is that what you said? Except it didn't feel that way. But that distinction between, you know, the head part of your writing or the, you know, the emotional, physical part of it. Do you have thoughts you want to add about this?
Well, I think, you know, just listening to, you know, both Virgil and Melissa talking about getting into your body, and especially poetry, as you were saying, Melissa, it's the musical side, and music is really that sister art form to poetry that where you feel it in your body, you know. And I totally agree that poetry is part of, it should be felt in your body. So Nina, in answer to your question, what I, you know, the poem that I just wrote, the one I read earlier, it was just something I was thinking about. And, you know, this idea of, you know, awe, finding awe, you know.
I can imagine that when you read it aloud, if you're able to read it in front of an audience, I have a feeling you will feel it.
Yeah.
More.
Oh, I think, and part of what happened, and, you know, the whole thing was in my head because it was, I don't usually write a poem because there's something specific I want to write about. Usually it just comes out of myself. And that was a poem that I thought about for a while, but it took getting out of the house, and I built a little shack, which is my writing studio. It took getting out of the house, away from the desk and away from the computer, into my shack to get the poem out. So that's, you know, kind of a way of getting back into my body. So yeah, it was a poem that started in my head and not in my gut, but it took getting back into, as we were just talking, back into my body to feel, you know, and out of my head to get the poem out. So even though it started in my head, it had to come out through my body. Yeah.
You know, for me, when I started writing and I kind of started putting down my guitar, part of what attracted me to writing was hearing how performers used rhythm and other kind of musical qualities in both in their writing as well as in their delivery. And I'm just going to make a quick mention of the fact that at the end of this month, well, I've been working with a percussionist that I haven't worked with him in well over a decade, but we've done things like that involve the relationship between rhythm and poetry. And right now we're really collaborating in such a way that, we're asking each other, how does this sound? What instrument should we use? How does it sound to you? How is it expressing or resonating with the words? And that's also, that's very embodied, particularly, with percussion.
Well, that's going way back to when we
Right.
first met, like 25 years ago, when we were both doing performance poetry. And so that's kind of you going back to your roots of, I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. That's
Yeah,
great.
I'm psyched about it. But just to bring it back to the two of you who have made this evening so vibrant, and I thank you both for being so generous of spirit in your readings and in your conversation. Do you have anything that you want to say? We're at 9:00. It's okay if we run over a little bit, but just take a moment to say whatever you want to say about any of this.
Well, I was going to mention this conversation about the body and, where poetry comes from and the body and all that. There was a series that is, I believe, now defunct called the Lannan Foundation videos. I don't know if that rings a bell, but Lee Young Lee has in his Lannan Foundation video talks about that quite eloquently and beautifully about where the poems that he writes come from in his body, and pretty illuminating stuff. So I just wanted to throw that in, for the discussion,
Thank you. Well, it's kind of a discussion I would easily continue for another hour or two, but Melissa?
That's basically just what I wanted to say as well, that I could just talk about this forever. And I'm so grateful to you for creating this really warm and open and vibrant sort of environment, and also the open mic readers. And it's just been a really great experience, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you both.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Thank you both. And thank you to our open micers who stuck
Yeah.
around.
And to our audience, thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. We'll
Good
see you all
night.
again next month, second Monday of every month for the last 22